You are looking at the face, ladies and gentlemen, of a woman who has survived the 6th level of purgatory known as Episode 6 of Rings of Power. Hello, this is Mara Jade, and I'm back with another video, and while this episode is very much action-heavy, the action still has to make sense to the overall story, with the intricate plot points, logistics and tactics, and so forth, and little to fucking none of it makes any sense. Now, I'm not going to go into everything because this is a spoiler-free review, and I save everything that I want to really break down for the spoiler live stream I do the next day around 4 p.m. Eastern. For the most part in this episode, it takes place in the Southlands. It is a very Southlands-centric episode. There's one scene, pretty much, of the 3 Númenórean ships? Yeah, that's supposed to carry enough soldiers and so forth, but whatever. 3 Númenórean ships on the sea, just reaching Middle-earth, and that's about it, pretty much. That's about it as far as any other location, because it is, like I said, a very Southland-centric episode, and it is presumably supposed to be the last stand of the Southlanders against Adar and his family, the orcs, in this case, in this region. However, in my humble opinion, there really are no stakes. Like, there would be maybe some level of apprehension, some stakes thereabouts, maybe even some emotional connection to these characters if something like this scenario had happened further into the series. Maybe midway into the series, like during Season 3, or a little bit later, when you've actually had a chance to bond with any of these characters, and maybe form, like I said, an emotional connection. But at this point in the juncture, you have no real emotional connection to these characters. You don't care really if they live or die, at least in my opinion, and you don't have last stands in the first season. A last stand, alright, it's supposed to have apprehension built up. It's supposed to have tension. It's supposed to have that emotional weight to it, and you have really none of it. You have had none of that built up to this point, and this point being what I called last week Helm's Deep Light. Now, I thought it was going to be in another location in the Southlands, and that's the only place I was pretty much wrong in, but for the most part, it is Helm's Deep Light. But the difference with Helm's Deep, what we saw in the Two Towers, and this Member Berries moment in this series, is that even though we had limited time with the characters introduced in the Two Towers, that Peter Jackson actually built up the tension, the stakes, and so forth. The number of orcs, the army of orcs, 10,000 against a couple hundred, if that, of Theoden's men, King Theoden's men. Combine that with the premise Theoden had to hold this location for several days. He held the location for several days. Remember what Gandalf said? Look for him at first light of the 5th day? Versus Helm's Deep Light, where they had to survive pretty much the night. Against this, what's supposed to be vastly outnumbered by these orcs, right? But like I said, even the tactics amongst the action has to make sense. Case in point, not shooting the orcs when they're crossing a bridge, when they're literally filtered, tunneled. And if you were to shoot orcs, there'd be dead bodies piling up, and you'd basically block the bridge that way. But no, they make the elf, Arendir, who's supposed to be the tactician of the group, makes some of the stupidest decisions ever in terms of defending the location, which ends up being the village, pretty much. Alright? I wish I could go into details during this episode. I wish I could go into details for this review, because, like I said, a lot of it really doesn't make any sense. And, like, the timeline itself, again, is all over the place because, now, again, can't touch on this because it gives away the ending, and I will go into it more spoiler-heavy tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern, thereabouts during the live stream, but when you take the ending into account and everything leading up to it, it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. It's pretty much Member Berries. The Member Berries episode. You remember the feels during Helm's Deep? You remember the feels during the ride of the Rohirrim on Pelennor Fields? You remember those feels? That's what the showrunners and producers are banking on pretty much in this episode. The feels. And feels is not story. Feels is not plot. Feels is not character development. Like I said, I can only speak for myself. I have no feelings whatsoever for any of these characters. At least not the feelings that the showrunners want me to feel, because I should be caring for these characters. I should be caring if they live or die. And at this point, I don't give a rat's ass. No, I'm going to take that back. I don't give a fucking rat's ass at this point, because nothing about this show is... nothing about this season at all has made me feel anything but indifference to the characters at best, and sheer rage at worst, given the playing fast and loose with the lore, breaking it left, right, center, with the egregious lore breaking in last week's episode, and the further bastardization of Galadriel's character. And at this point, I'm just calling her Karen. Mary Sue Karen at this point, because, again, she's supposed to be the lead character. She's supposed to be the central protagonist, the one that we're supposed to root for. The Galadriel of Lord of the Rings, the Third Age. The beloved character. The beloved Tolkien creation. She's none of that. She is none of that. Pretty much. And I still cringe. I still feel anger at her being called Commander of the Northern Armies, a title Elrond had. Elrond was the commander. But then they reduced him to literally an architect. Pretty much in this series. I'm not going to go into details with that. Everybody's watched my reviews and spoiler breakdowns, knows what I feel about that. But like in the meantime, it's all the other characters are pretty much, for the most part, looking at Galadriel in awe. Like, somehow they know of her exploits. Somehow they know of her exploits. And the entirety of Middle-earth, the Southlanders, the most random damn village in existence, non-canonical I might add, has somehow heard of Galadriel's exploits. We're told, not shown up until this point, pretty much. And we're supposed to be rooting for her. We're supposed to be cheering for her. We're supposed to be just enamored of this character. And they've developed none of that with really any of the only really likable character so far in the series is the Lloyd Owens Elendil, pretty much. He's the only really likable character. He's not exactly Elendil. He's Elendil in name only, per se, but for the most part, in his performance, he's really the only likable character. He's the one I have any remote care for in terms of this series so far. I care nothing for any of these characters because the showrunners have given me nothing so far. And that's about all I can say in this review, pretty much. Keeping it spoiler free. Keeping it spoiler free. I don't want to give away necessarily any spoilers and so forth, because there's a major one that happens near the end of the episode, but saving it for tomorrow. But at any rate, what are your thoughts if you are watching this season so far? Do you like it again? Not like it? Are you still in the middle, pretty much? Let me know all that fun stuff down in the comments below. Like I said, I go live next day, 4 p.m. Eastern, for a spoiler breakdown where I'll go into pretty much scene by scene the episode and my thoughts, particularly the end of the episode. That part I was like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. But at any rate, I hope you enjoy the review. Let me know what you're thinking of the season and so far, or have you even watched it, and are you watching House of the Dragon instead? Again, let me know all that. I'll be live later on Twitch tonight, playing some more Apex Legends, and unless anything changes with Sergeant Herbs and Chewie, so tune in for that. About 7:30 p.m., 8 p.m. Eastern, thereabouts. It depends on when I finish things in the evening. This is Mara Jade. Hope you like this video. Share it on social media if you will. And I very fucking much will start day drinking.